to my computer.
Okay, cool.
We're recording now, so we'll go ahead and get started in just a couple more moments. Welcome to all the folks who are joining us. I'd love to hear from you. Tell us in the chat function, which you can find using that little more button that you should see on either the top or bottom of your screen. Tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this is your first ever Bossed Up webinar, let me know. We are so excited to have you here. For those of you who don't know, I'm Emily Aries. I'm the founder and CEO of Bossed Up. I'm so excited to have Clarion King joining us today. One of our featured trainers, a career coach, someone who's got a lot to share about expanding your horizons when it comes to management, which has really been the focus of our Bossed Up content this month. So if you are looking for more on management, make sure to sign up for all the good stuff we have at bossedup.org, and you can find downloadables and articles and all that kinds of good stuff. Hi, Julianne. Welcome to your first Bossed Up webinar.
So and the podcast. Don't forget that.
Don't forget the podcast. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
We actually have something coming out tomorrow, our Thursday Boss Tip podcast this week, all about giving good feedback as a manager.
Yay.
We will touch on a little bit today.
A little bit, yep.
We also had a great conversation with a bunch of different experts that I've interviewed every Tuesday this month, all about management. So I'm excited to get things started. But for those of you who are new, I want to give you a little bit of background on Bossed Up. I started this company 5 years ago in Washington, D.C. I've since moved to the beautiful Denver, Colorado, which is a pretty awesome place to live, as you know. And I started Bossed Up because I, frankly, like so many women, burnt out at one point in my career. I was on this fast track for achievement. I was the youngest state director in the nation, working on behalf of newly elected President Barack Obama. So I really ascended the ranks in my political career very quickly. By the age of 26, I was a senior digital political strategist, placing millions of dollars of advertising buys in tight races all across the country. And it was great, but I had lost touch with what really got me into this to begin with, which is helping people, making our world a better place. And I really dove in head first in a very nerdy kind of way to better understand what burnout is. At our core here at Bossed Up, we really help women who are navigating those kinds of pivot points in their lives. And we do so from a data-driven perspective. I hit the books. I built a board of advisors full of academics. And we tried to get at the heart of, when it comes to gender specifically and in the existence of being a woman, what makes it a little harder for us women to take the reins in our own careers, assert ourselves, and craft careers with impact that really sustain us over the long term, not just in service of people all the time that ends up bottoming us out. So that's part of why I care so much about these issues. And I'm familiar with navigating many different career transitions. Along the past 5 years, we've helped tens of thousands of women through our in-person programs like Bossed Up Boot Camp, which I'll tell you more about. We just had one the other weekend with Clarion's daughter in it, actually, in Chicago, Illinois, who was a great participant. And also, of course, all of our online free resources. So you're in the right place. If you are here to take your career to the next level, if you're here because you want to get ahead of the game and want to prepare for that next step in your career, or if you're here because you're feeling a little lost, feeling a little burnt out, you're looking for a sense of renewal, this is the community that's here for you at every stage of your career, and we'll keep it real. So thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to share my screen so we can see Clarion's wonderful slides. And Clarion, feel free to take it away. Oh, one last housekeeping note. We will not be using the Q&A function, so continue to ask your questions and weigh in with feedback throughout today's conversation using the chat function, and I will manage that. So I'll hop in, Clarion, if we have any clarifying questions.
Yeah, sounds great. So everything that Emily just spoke to, first of all, hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining today, wherever you are in the world. I really appreciate you spending about 45 minutes or an hour of your time with us today, and I'm hoping that we can get you going in the direction of understanding what an adaptive management style is and how you can incorporate it. And as Emily talked about, what's so great about this is women are primed to actually be adaptive leaders by nature, right? So we are always adapting ourselves to situations. So it's a perfect environment for you to learn how to this management style technique and to use it at work to really advance your career and advance your team if you're managing people either directly or indirectly. So we're going to go ahead and get started. What we're going to be covering today is first, how do you determine your own management style? Do you even know what your management style is? And if you do, how does that affect your team? And then how do you adapt your management style? And finally, how to build and lead the perfect team, which I know is a funny term to use, but I'll explain a little bit why we use the word perfect in there. So what's your leadership style? I don't know. Do any of you actually know what your leadership style is, or do you know much about leadership styles? Let's see, we're gonna, here we go. I'm trying to move the chat so I can see it. So let's go on to the next slide. All right, so if you are curious about your leadership style, one of the ways that you can determine is by taking a quiz. And I have a link here, and I'll put that in the chat as well. But basically, you can go out and figure out, based on answering just a few questions, really how you tend to lean as far as your leadership style is concerned. Oh, she's going to copy it for me. Thank you so much. So basically, the three kind of golden standard for leadership styles are these three different types. And no, there's no singular right leadership style. But in 1939, psychologist Kurt Lewin did a study, and he wanted to figure out, well, what are the types of leaders and how do those leaders affect their team members? And he was able to distill it down to three different types. There's authoritarian, participative, and delegative. And we're going to get into details about this. But basically the types authoritarian, which is autocratic leadership. And in that case, you're more directive and you control all the activities without any meaningful participation by other members of a team. So you would think about things like at Amazon when they're doing packages, right? So the people who work packaging things, well, that's probably very directive because you have a process and the person in charge is telling you when to do things and what to meet goals, and you don't really have a lot of participation there. You're filling boxes and sealing them and sending them out, right? But then there's participative democratic leadership. And in that case, it's more of a situation where you're actually listening to and taking into account what your team members are saying. But in the end, you actually have the final say over what happens. So you gather information and help them participate in making decisions, but you get the final say. And then there's delegative or laissez-faire leadership. And in that kind of leadership, you're not giving a lot of guidance. So maybe the people on your team are experts and they really just are autonomous and don't need a lot of direction. And so you can just delegate to them. So these are the kinds of leadership styles that people tend to gravitate towards, and they do use combinations of these. So it's not like you're always authoritarian or always participative. You could be a combo of any of those. Yeah. You should be able to take that without being a member, but I'll double check. It might be because I'm logged in as a member. I'll double check the link. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. So let's talk about what are the benefits of these management styles and what is the downside. Because of course, as you know, every style you use has an upside and a downside to it. Thanks, Emily. So authoritarian, autocratic leadership can be really beneficial. It's efficient, right? You get things done because there's one person making the decision. They can make quick decisions, and the people that are reporting to them or are part of their teams don't really have a lot of say in what's happening. So if you need to do things with expediency, being authoritarian can actually work well. I know there's a lot of negative connotation with that word, but in reality, sometimes it's important, and we'll talk more about that later. But the downside of that is that typically it's very demoralizing. You know, after a while, people get tired of being told what to do without any indication that they can participate or that it's meaningful work for them or that they get a say in what they're doing. So this happens that authoritarian leadership on a regular basis is not very effective to creating teams that are happy, healthy, and whole, right? Now, participative, which I think most people would think, well, that's probably the best way to be as a leader, but there isn't a single right way, as I talked about, right? So you have the final say on decisions, and the upside of that is you build great trust. You have a good working relationships, and your team members feel empowered, and they're super engaged with their work. But the downside is if you have to make quick decisions, it can be a lot slower in the decision-making process, and that can lead to missed opportunities or even miscommunications about what needs to be done. And then delegative or laissez-faire leadership, I love this picture. This guy looks super comfortable and he's super happy, is very hands-off. So in this case, it would be like people that you are working with, either you're leading a project or you have people who report to you directly, and they are experts, right? They don't need your help. You basically can say, hey, what do you want to do and how do you see this working? And they can run with it. And it's a great way to be if you have highly skilled and highly motivated team members. And we're going to talk in a minute about what if you have highly skilled team members, but they're not that motivated. Can you use laissez-faire or delegative? Probably not, but we'll talk about what you can do. And this works great with freelancers, consultants, or people that you work with in your organization that work very independently. In my role, I work really independently, so I don't need my manager to do anything except kind of tell me generally what needs to be done. But the downside is that if you have people in your team or in your project team or even in your organization that you're working with that don't have a lot of skill in a particular area or don't have a lot of knowledge, or if they're even poorly motivated, it can lead to poor performance. So you can see that there's benefits and downsides to each of these, right? Okay, so how do you guys identify? Can you tell us, like, do you think of it like, you think of yourself as authoritarian or participative or delegative, or do you use a combo of these things? And make sure when you're typing in the chat that it says make sure it says all panelists and attendees, otherwise we're just gonna get it. So how do you guys identify? All right, Amanda, participative and delegative. Yeah, and it depends on your team, right? Or the people you're working with. Yeah, okay, see, and I love Leah, I love your, it's Lee or Leah, I'm not sure, but I don't want to mispronounce it. She said mostly delegative with some participative. So you can actually lean towards one more than the other. So you can be, depending on the situation, you can be more participative and kind of a little delegative, or the other way around. All right. Servant leadership, yes, and that is something I have some other proposals for Emily on stuff, and we can talk about other types of leadership. Servant leadership is awesome, Alyssa. That's great. Yep. And I love it. Chelsea says basically she uses all of them, right? It depends on the person. Some people need more help, and we're going to talk about that. Yes, and Gina, you've only really worked for authoritative and delegative. Yeah, and I think there are probably a lot of people that have worked for authoritative or autocratic leaders, right? And you can see that that's not the best situation if it's that way all the time, but sometimes it might be necessary, right? Awesome, you guys are doing great. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. Okay, so when you're trying to determine what a leadership style actually is, I want you to think of it in the terms of it's the intersection of the degree of direction that's needed versus the degree of support that's needed to accomplish your goals. Now, this model, which is super colorful and has lots of lines and arrows on it, I'm going to explain it to you. This is Blanchards Model of leadership styles. And the reason that I love this is because it directly looks at the individual who's doing the task, plus it looks at their willingness and their competence or their skill in being able to accomplish the task. So this is one of the ways that you as an adaptive leader can change your style to adapt to not only the team member, but the actual task that the team member is doing. So the example is if the degree of direction needed is low, like the team member is highly skilled, like Emily said, I'm sure she has lots of people who work for her are experts and highly skilled. and they just don't need a lot of support. They know what they're doing. They know what the goals are. They can work autonomously. Well, then you can delegate, right? Laissez-faire. You can just say, hey, this is what I need to get done, and they're going to go do it. Don't really have to worry about it. But if the degree of direction needed is high, like maybe it's a new team member, they're less skilled, and the degree of support needed is high, the team member is kind of unsure or has low confidence, then you may go into a coaching or sort of a more autocratic way of helping them by both motivating and also helping them with skills. So the way this model works is you start at the bottom and you look at the development level of the individual. So you can see it moves from developing to developed. And then you look at also what is the directive behavior. So how much skill do they actually have for this task? And also how much support do they need? So for instance, in D1, which is the developing team member, they need directing. And the reason is they're enthusiastic. They're like, yeah, let's go. I'm super willing. I want to do whatever. But they may be new to the team and they just don't have a lot of skill. So you're going to have to use more direction for them, check-ins, one-on-ones, let them know what they need to do and how they need to do it so they can build their skill level, right? And then as you're moving through the development of the level of the individual, you're looking at somebody who may have some skill, but maybe they have low commitment. And in this case, what I like to refer this to as low confidence. Maybe they're not confident in their ability to get it done, or maybe they're not even confident in what they're supposed to be doing. And in this case, they're going to need coaching. So they're going to need you to not direct them as much as support the confidence in their ability to get that job done. And then as we move over, we're going to see people who maybe have they're really actually getting pretty skilled at this point, but their commitment or their confidence is wavers. Sometimes they feel super confident and other times, not so much. In this case, you don't need to give them any direction. You just need to work on supporting them, helping them to feel empowered, helping them to see the wins, and helping them in development areas on how to focus on getting that confidence. And then again, finally, we move to delegating, which is those highly skilled and highly motivated individuals. So I use this all the time when I'm assessing my teams, and it's a great model, even though I know it's got a lot of stuff going on there. So has anyone ever used this kind of model, or is this any way you use to sort of support or look at how to support your team, or even how to support yourself? I use this to analyze myself. I look at like, where am I, and it relates to this task, and kind of what do I need to sort of reach out to my manager and ask them for help in a particular area. This doesn't go one way. Leadership is really from every direction. So if you can assess yourself in the same way too. So I don't know if anybody's ever used a model like this, or they've actually, or even do you think this model might work for you when you're trying to look at your team members and the tasks that they have to do? I use this a lot in project management as well. And I think it works great on a project, I have to tell you.
I also just want to chime in here to say, I feel like this is a really helpful paradigm to consider when hiring.
Yes.
Because there's only so much that you can do to sort of engineer the kind of team that you have. Mm-hmm. And, I prefer laissez-faire management, but that's not always possible. It really depends on your team. So I can almost see this as being such a helpful way to think about hiring and think about who you really need on your team in order to make your management style possible, or reverse, how can I play into my existing team and provide the management that they need. So sometimes it's you have more control over that than others. Ooh,
yeah.
Well, great questions here. Can we take some questions? Do you have a second?
Yeah, please.
So, someone also used the Q&A function. Just as a reminder, feel free to throw questions and clarifying comments or just comments throughout the webinar in our chat function. So Marianne says, I've had an issue supporting someone who feels as though they shouldn't need the support, getting frustrated about needing support. It's hard to be in the intersection of helping someone who needs it and is frustrated with your direction. What's a way to address this person's frustration when you're feeling as though you're not able to help them because they're too frustrated? Ooh.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And this does happen because we're talking, especially when you're talking about that confidence, right? So this person may feel like they don't need as much direction or they don't want it, and they're seeing what you're doing as maybe a form of micromanaging, and that's causing more frustration. And I think what the best thing to do is actually have an honest conversation about this. I'm going to talk a little bit later about continuous assessment and continuous feedback. So what I do with somebody in that situation is I just have like, I call it come to Jesus, but I just have a conversation with them where I'm like, okay, let's do a clearing conversation where you state how are you feeling and what's going on with you, and how and again, I talked to Emily later. I'm going to propose a webinar on difficult conversations, which I'll go more into detail on this type of thing. But basically, I have called it a clearing. It's called the clearing method. And you basically sit down and you have them state the facts of the situation, how they're feeling about it, and what they think that they need. Because your perception of the issue and their perception of the issue are obviously different, and that's what's causing the conflict. So really just be willing to sit down and listen to what they have to say. And then if they don't want as much direction, find a way to provide that direction in a different way. So maybe they work closely with a mentor, somebody that's more of a peer, or maybe you give them direction in an indirect way. Like, let's sit down and figure out all of your goals and tasks, and then you can just hold them accountable to that. So there are different ways you can adapt to that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let me, I'm going to go dark again, and then we'll get back to the slideshow, and we'll continue to cruise ahead, and we'll have time for more Q&A at the end, too.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, pop quiz time. So I just explained this whole management style, how you figure out your leadership style and how to change and adapt that. So what I'd like you to do is look at this list of questions. There's 4 things here, are 4 scenarios. So pick one of them, put the number in, remember, in the chat window, and then tell me, like, let's say you take situation 3. Your employees are having trouble getting the job done. Their performance as a whole is less than expected. So tell me, if you have that situation, what type of management style or combos of style you might use, and then just a little bit about why. So this is your time to shine, little pop quiz. I'm just checking if you're really paying attention. So anybody have any feedback on that? I love you have an employee who's very motivated but has little experience. That one should be an easy one.
And just to clarify, so people should put the number of the scenario and then the management style name.
Yes, correct. So what would you use? Number 1 is actually really a little complex because you're considering a major change in the way your company does business, and your staff has an excellent record of achieving their goals, and your relation with them is trusting and supportive, and your employees do a great job, right? So you know that laissez-faire that Emily was talking about, but at the same time, there's going to be a big shift, right? And then what do you do when that shift happens? Okay, so I'm not seeing any responses. Are you, Emily?
No, this is a little bit tricky. Can you maybe walk us through a couple of those?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, so let's take the first one. So Emily had talked about how she loves good. Thank you, Katie, for coaching. Yes, I love that. Yes. And see, look, Nicola says actually delegating. And I think you could use a combination of both of those, right? So the thing is, if you have an employee who's motivated, but they have a little experience, you would typically use directing, but you could use a combination of any of these. It really depends on the individual employee's development and also the task, right? So if you're, we're getting some really great answers. Oh my goodness, Gina did all of them. You're an overachiever, Gina. This is great. So, participative for number 1, adjusting as needed. I love that. So number 1, we were talking about, you're going to do a major change. So Emily, let's say you were doing this major change in your org, but you have all these expert people. Well, the reality is you're going to have to change to sort of a participative way of doing things because the decision needs to include all of these experts in it, right? So even though that change is going to ultimately be your decision, their input is important. And so that's why you would move to participative or kind of this coaching supportive type of way of being. So
Yeah, I love
Awesome.
that. It almost reminds me of our use of retreats. Like whenever there's
Mm-hmm.
a huge change coming, we typically host a retreat, and it's like, hey, we all work together virtually, but let's all get together and throw our expertise into the same room for a change instead of being
Yeah.
in silos. And what comes out of that is so much motivation and buy-in because they've
So
helped shape
much.
the plan. And I am better for it, right? Like nobody can make those big change decisions in a silo, you know?
I agree. No, and well, and people do all the time, but at the same time, it's way harder to get buy-in when you do it that way
Right.
because people are questioning why, especially if you're not very good at communicating. I thought I saw a question. Oh, what kind of questions are good to ask in an interview to understand the management style of who would be your boss if you were to take that job? Ooh, Brittany, that's a great question. So I'll throw a couple of them out there so I don't, because I want to sidetrack this too much. But, what I tend to ask is, can you tell me what your ideal employee, what kind of relationship you would have with them in this job? So I kind of put them on the spot because I want to know, is this really going to work for me? And what is their expectation? Because when you apply for a job, you're applying for a list of tasks, essentially, right? It's just like, here's all the things you're going to do and you're going to be responsible for. But you don't really know how your manager leads. And then I also ask them questions like, how they ask you in an interview, can you give me an example of a time, blah, 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 blah. I actually asked them, can you give me an example of a time where somebody who was reporting to you made a mistake and how you handled that mistake? So I switch it around on them. And honestly, they're so surprised that I ask those questions. It actually leaves a lasting impression. So remember, you're interviewing them too. So that's an excellent question. So think about what would you ask if you were asking somebody you were hiring. Kind of turn those around and ask the same person who's hiring you those questions. I hope that answers your question, Brittany. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. All right, so we've talked about, what it means to be adaptive and what it means to kind of shift your way of thinking about how you manage people. And I'm sure, in reality, you're probably doing this without even knowing, but it's good to be planful about the way you're being adaptive. So let's talk about why this is sort of necessary in today's working world. I don't know about you, but I feel like this person on this picture all the time. It's literally like the entire day is chasing me. Yesterday, I had this entire plan. I was set. I was like, got my list. I had it all planned out. And then something happened at work that was an emergency. And the rest of my day was taken up with this issue. And I didn't get anything done that I wanted to get done. So I know that everybody feels this way. And imagine not only you feel this way, but anybody that you're working with, that you're leading also feels exactly this way. Okay, so let's change the slide. Now, the reason for this is we're living not even just in a workplace, but in our home lives and in the broader and social context, we are living in a VUCA world. Now, VUCA is a term that was coined from the military, and it means volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I don't know about you guys, but this resonates so well with me. Doesn't it feel like this all the time? It's like, what is happening? There's so much uncertainty. There's so much complexity. And you're having to manage in this ever-changing environment. So many of these things are out of your control. Sometimes you're having to take action. You don't really know what's happening. It's like, I'm reacting to this, but am I certain that I know what's happening? And then also there are interdependencies that you may not know about or suddenly show up that you weren't expecting. And sometimes you actually have to do things that are way outside of your comfort zone. So you can also be that person that's very willing but doesn't have a lot of skill in that area, which creates a lot of tension and stress for you, right? Okay, so go ahead and, especially on the news, yes. I know I have to turn that off during the day. All right, so why is this even happening? Besides all of the stuff that's going on in the world that we know is turning on the news alerts us to all the craziness that's happening, it's because organizations are actually changing pretty dramatically from the way things were to the way things are now and why they're changing that. So right now, we used to be in this very bureaucratic, top-down hierarchy, and you still may work in an organization like that. I mean, there's still a hierarchy in an organization. Somebody is ultimately in charge, right? But the way that people work together isn't in a top-down fashion anymore, because things are changing so dramatically. And really, what we need to be able to do is, create systems that encourage teams and individuals to meet each other, share information transparently, and move from team to team, even depending on the issue to be addressed. So think about this. If you're a manager that has direct reports, at some point you may be managing different people because they're going to switch in and out of your team as necessary, because we're moving to this very agile workforce. So rather than there being people rewarded by position, the rewards for people will be coming from their skills and what they can demonstrate in the organization, how they can create value. So the old model was essentially very fixed mindset and focused on a closed experience. Basically, it was very structured, and the primary goal was really about creating value for the stakeholder. And now the goal is to create customer value. So think about telecommunications. Here's Verizon and AT&T and Sprint and T-Mobile, and you know what? Basically, they're all selling the same thing, so they don't have any competitive advantage. Their only competitive advantage is creating customer value. So what can they do to attract customers, which means they have to shift and change all the time. They have to be developing, they have to be agile, they have to be flexible. And I'm not going to read you this little chart on the right, but I do think it's a really important chart to understand that there are underlying drivers, there's changes in economic structure, there's labor displacement, and emerging landscape that is changing all of these things that are affecting the way that we do business. So being adaptable in this environment is critical, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So I don't know if you guys have like these still very bureaucratic organizations, but I know where we work, it's changing all the time. It's like, I think we've been through 3 reorgs in like 2 years, and my managers have changed. And so we're always having to not only adapt ourselves as leaders, but adapt to the business changes as well. Okay, so go ahead and move to the next question.
Before we do, we've got an interesting question here.
Yep.
How do you encourage someone who's got a mindset of, just follow the chain of command without question, to expand and be more collaborative and willing to voice their actual opinion? And to clarify, this is not a manager, but an entry-level employee.
Okay, cool. Great question. So if you're looking at this, an entry-level employee, keep in mind, they are really unsure a lot of times, right? They don't have a lot of confidence of their place in the organization. And what I do with newer employees is I try to create as many wins as possible for them. So what I do is try to put them into a position where they're just pushed just enough that they're forced to have to give their opinion. So giving them like a small assignment that they're in charge of, where they maybe have to provide feedback on something, even asking their opinion. Hey, could you go review, let's just say, this policy that we have on how we're doing this process, and give me your input on what you think about it, and really start pushing them to see that you are confident in them, and you encouraging them to give feedback and give you their assessment. And then as they gain in confidence, they'll be more likely to be more collaborative. But you kind of have to set up the environment to like give these little wins. I mean, think about it. And when I say this, I'm not comparing adults to children, but think about it with kids, right? With a kid, what you do is you try to set that environment up so they can have little successes. And it's the same thing with like an entry-level employee. Like, what little successes can you build in for them so that they start to feel a part of the organization? So I hope that helps. Okay, so let's move to the next one. All right, so speaking of which, how do you build and lead the perfect team? Now, I know the word perfect is a little like, wait a minute, Michelle, wait a minute, Clarion, what are you talking about? The perfect team? But when I say perfect, I mean ideal. And we're going to talk about what Google did to figure out how to build the perfect team. And hopefully you can use this information as well. All right, so Google in 2012 went out and was like, hey, you know what? We are the data analysis kings. We're going to go out and we're going to analyze this data, and we're going to figure out exactly what is that formula for building the perfect team at Google. So hold on a second. Emily, I'm going to stop really quickly and answer this question.
Okay.
So what do you do when your employer is not open to an agile approach? I've literally been told we don't want free thinkers here.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that as well, if you want to.
Oh my goodness, we don't want free. What does that even mean? Like, who says that?
Honestly, I always make relationship parallels when I think about workplace choices in some ways, because when you're picking an employer, you're also, it's kind of like choosing to be with someone for a little while.
Yeah.
And everybody has baggage. Everybody's imperfect. And I remember distinctly thinking when I was in the dating pool, okay, like, whose baggage can I live with? Like, what baggage is okay? And I almost encourage you to think really long and hard, Jillian, like, is this going to work for me? Because take them at their word. Like, if they say something like that, they're probably not lying about it. You know, they're true to who they are. They know who they are. And the question is, do you know who you are? Like, can you thrive in that kind of a community? A lot of people can. A lot of people are fine with that. Can you pursue free thinking elsewhere that gives you that sense of fulfillment and impact and creativity elsewhere? Or is this not going to work for you? And if the latter is true, it's like trying to change a partner, a romantic partner. It ain't going to happen, right? It's like an exhausting, fruitless endeavor. So start thinking about changing your environment, changing your relationship. It's okay to have standards for yourself. They have standards for themselves. So you've got to decide, like, do I need to start looking elsewhere? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And I would say in the meantime, it's really difficult because obviously if someone says something so dramatic as we don't want free thinkers here, like that's really, I would be taken aback as well. And they're not lying about it. You will never change another person. That's correct. And so I do think Emily is right that you do need to analyze whether or not can you thrive in this environment? And really, you want to thrive at work. If you're not thriving where you are, then you need to find another place to work that supports you better. I will tell you, I worked for an organization that was 150 years old, and they were like, this is the way we've always done it, was their mantra. Like, they were just like, well, we've always done it this way. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't work. And so I did push on it because I'm just pushy. And I was able to affect change, but I will say that it was also hard to manage how I was being perceived by other people. And it actually resulted in a really difficult conversation, which I can talk about on the next webinar I do. But the reality is that if you're going to put yourself at risk if you push too hard, and that may make it more difficult for you at work. So what you have to decide is where do you want to work? And does this place you're working actually fit what you want to do in your life and how you want to be at work? And if it doesn't, then it's time to look somewhere else. But in the meantime, I would say that the way to incorporate what you're trying to do from an agile point of view is just to do it in your daily work. Create that the agile work environment for yourself within the structure of what you're doing. And that way you can practice all of these skills, but not necessarily enforce it upon the organization. But yeah, that's a tough one. It really is. I had to leave. I left. I went to a different organization because I was like, this doesn't work for me.
Well, I think what's important, Clarion, is that you're talking about seizing whatever autonomy you do have, whatever power you have over yourself. If it's over how you can lead your day or how you can make your breakfast, like, start where you are, right? Like, whatever control you have, seize it, use it. And a lot of people don't leave relationships that aren't great because dating is annoying and hard and vulnerable. It's like putting yourself out there. And the job search is exactly the same way. We're like, well, I got to love the one I'm with because finding another one is extremely
it's too hard. Yeah. And well, I always say a lot of times people get married because they're like, well, this person's good enough. Yeah. I can live with this, right? Type of thing.
There's actually a model. There's a name for that, and no shade on anybody because it's called like the practical partnership model, and it's in this great book, Jill Filipovich's book called The Pursuit of Happiness, or the HSPHAT, The Feminist Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
And we can make those decisions mindfully in our personal and professional lives. The key is making it for yourself.
That's correct.
Don't be coerced into it. Don't feel like you have to settle for this because you can't find anything else. That's bullshit. And, we could do a whole other webinar on the job search. Oh, wait, many times. And you can find a lot of resources on bossedup.org about it. But
yeah, absolutely. So, but speaking of which, it's a good transition, because really what Google found, so they went out and they had all of these assumptions, right? Which I think you might have too. Like, I'm going to build the perfect team. Well, you know what we need? We need people that probably have same skill sets and backgrounds, maybe a certain type of leader or manager. It creates the best teams. But what they found ultimately, and they surveyed 180 teams across the globe, and they found that what their assumptions were completely wrong, that it had nothing, like literally nothing to do with similar backgrounds, similar personalities. It didn't have anything to do with the type of manager. What it had to do with was psychological safety. So what you were just talking about, and what Emily was just referring to, is that you can't feel psychologically safe in the environment you're in, because you are not free to take risks, and you can't be vulnerable in front of people who are telling you they don't want you to think freely, right? So this is what they found. It's the number one thing. So as a leader, particularly an adaptive management style allows you to create psychological safety. And again, it was far above the other things. Now, there are 5 things in total that contribute to building a perfect team or an ideal team, and they are their impact. People want to feel like their work is challenging and it's creating change. They want work that's meaningful. It's important to them personally. They need structure and clarity. I don't know about you guys, but there have been plenty of places where I worked where I don't even know what my goals are. I'm just doing work based upon what I'm being told that needs to be done, but I'm not even sure how that's affecting the organization. And the closer your team gets to understanding how what they're doing affects the organization directly, the more engaged they're going to be. And number 2, I cannot emphasize enough, creating teams that are dependable and accountable, particularly in the space we're working in and work right now, is critical. I can't tell you how many people don't show up to meetings late, cancel meetings at the last minute. They're not dependable. And we're creating this environment where not being dependable is kind of okay. So keep in mind these 5 things. Google put a lot of time and research into this, and they found that this is really what creates the best team. So, okay, so what is actually adaptive leadership? Well, there are core leadership principles, and I think all of you are probably familiar with them: strategy, action, results, and they include things like, does the leader have vision and business acumen? Do they have the courage to lead? Can they communicate well? Are they able to take risks? And are they agile? Well, those are kind of the core competencies of leadership, but adaptive leaders expand beyond that. So they're looking at things like emotional intelligence, organizational justice, character, and development. And the reason that these are so critical, and let's focus on development for a second, is not just creating lifelong learning for the people who are reporting to or working on teams with you, but for yourself as a leader. You are embodying all of these characteristics that you also want your team to embody, right? So you have integrity. You say what you mean. You walk the talk, right? You have credibility. You tell the truth, even if it's hard. You value differences. So you don't look at differences as a place of conflict. You look at differences as something to embrace and to show us, expose what we may not be thinking about. And then also things like decision fairness, and most importantly in emotional awareness is self-awareness. And so we're going to talk about in a second what that means. So they did this survey, actually a really big study, and they were trying to identify if the way that leaders saw themselves was the same way that their direct reports, their peers, and their managers saw them. And what they found was that there were 5 gaps in leaders' awareness. Now, I don't know, you guys can give me like a thumbs up or an amen, but I am sure that you will identify with managers that you've had or leaders you've had that maybe meet these top 5 gaps, right? So you can see they're the same across the board, but they're in different orders, right? But the top 2 are exactly the same. And the first one is self-awareness. Now, I cannot emphasize this enough. Being totally self-aware of how you are affecting other people is going to create the best situation for you in your relationships with the people you manage and your peers and your managers themselves, right? So we think we're demonstrating certain leadership qualities, but often those are perceived differently from others. Now, do any of you work anywhere where you have 360 feedback at work? I mean, have you ever participated in an actual 360 feedback? Oh, yay, Lauren has. Yeah, right? And how many, and there are people who have, that's great. It's so awesome. Phoebe's like, what is that? Okay, so 360 feedback, just to clarify, means that feedback is coming from every direction. So you as an individual would, during, like, let's say you were having a performance review, which is, something that is, yearly performance reviews are going to change quite a bit. And move to like more one-to-one feedback on an ongoing basis. But let's say you were having a yearly performance review. Well, you might seek out somebody that you worked with to give feedback, right? Well, in this case, you're seeking out people that are above you and below you hierarchically to say their impressions of the work that you've done with them. And it can be a great tool. I think there are people who really fear it because they are afraid to receive negative feedback, and that might represent something that they don't really want to deal with, or they're afraid their manager would find out or something like that. But the reality is, the more you actually seek personal feedback about yourself, the better off you are at being able to ascertain how you're being perceived by others and how you can make adjustments. And I can, I'll put on the Bossed Up Courage community an assessment that I use when I'm seeking feedback from others that you can kind of send out even to like friends. I've given it to my husband and said, like, how would you rate me on these things? Which I know sounds really funny, but I'm curious, like, how does he see me? Because he sees me work all the time, and he's, because I work from home. So all of that is really great. And being self-aware is something that allows you the opportunity to really make those changes that are necessary to make you a better leader. So, but the second one I do want to touch on too, which is information sharing. I can tell you that in my organization, we get the worst. Sometimes we get the worst information. It's like, do you guys remember that game Telephone, or they used to call Whisper Down the Lane? So like you start and you whisper into somebody's ear, and then the next person and the next person. And by the time it gets to the end, it's like nothing like what it started out at the beginning. That happens in organizations all the time because no one asks clarifying questions, right? So they're just like, oh, okay, so-and-so said this. This is how I heard it. And so now I'm going to repeat that to the next person. So a lot of times what happens in information sharing is you don't have a plan for really communicating effectively, and that's something that leaders need to develop for themselves in an adaptive management style. Really cool stuff. Okay, moving on. Okay, so ultimately what I want you to understand is why it's so critical to be an adaptive leader. And these are just some like everyday things that could happen, and why you using one management style, even though like Emily was saying, she really prefers laissez-faire, and you're going to gravitate towards one. Why? Because Emily and I are similar in this is, I don't like telling people what to do. To be honest, I really would rather have a conversation and then just know you're going to do it, but that just isn't always possible. I mean, Emily's done a great job because she surrounded herself by people that she can manage that way, right? But you may not get a choice in who you end up managing. So, if your house is on fire and you need someone to wake up and get them out and everything, you want to be authoritative, right? You're not going to be like, so should we have a decision about who should get out of the house first? And I don't know, what should we take? You're not going to stop to do that, right? You need to be authoritative. But if you applied that to a preschooler who is learning to tie their shoes, you're not going to get the same reaction, right? They're going to be in tears, and you're probably not going to get them to tie their shoes. So you'd have to adjust that. And so what about if you wanted somebody to come support you at a car wash, right, on Saturday? You might end up there by yourself if you use that approach. So as you know, you're doing this anyway. That's my point, is that you're already doing this in your life. You adapt the style that you're interacting with people to the situation. And so you just need to expand that, or try to expand that within the scope of how you lead. And if you do that, you're going to get much better results. Okay, so I'm a totally reticent manager. Okay, next slide. All right, so I'm going to break this down in the simplest terms because I've given you so much information. Now, I like this model. It's called skill versus will. And basically, it just breaks that Blanchards model into a simplistic form, right? So how willing is somebody and how able are they? And that's really what you want to think about. If I'm giving a task to somebody, how willing are they to do it? And you'll know that because of their reactions and how they respond to it. And then how able are they to actually do it? Do they have the skills? Do they have the tools to get it done? And then you can adjust your leadership style to how willing or able that person is, depending on the situation and the individual person. And I want you to think of it in terms of like, new people are apprentices, and then they're developing, and then they become skilled, and finally they become expert. And your job is to get them to that expert level if you can, because of course that makes a better team, but it also gives them and you more opportunity within the organization. If you become a manager that can build great teams, guess what you're going to get? You're going to get bigger teams. You're going to get promoted because you have the you're demonstrating that you can do this. Okay, in next slide. All right, so somebody was talking about feedback, and I want to touch on the importance of continuous feedback. So this is one of my favorite quotes by George Bernard Shaw, which is, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." And it is. How many times have you said something, and then later on somebody says you said what you said, but it's nothing like what you actually said, right? Or you think you've communicated something to somebody, but the way they understood it was different. And we are so busy, we just don't stop to say, so like, did you understand that? Can you tell me what I said? So how would you do this? So rather than kind of, I think, can you tell me what I said sort of can seem aggressive. So a lot of times what I do with people is when I've given them information, I say, okay, so, how are you going to approach this? And then I can figure out whether they actually heard me or not. And that gives them some autonomy in sort of devising how they're going to approach this without being so directive. But why do we want to do continuous feedback? Well, really, continuous feedback is important because it corrects people in the moment or gives them good feedback right in the moment. It's motivating. It helps them to understand where they may be going off the rails and where they need to be. It also tells them where they stand with you, and it's an opportunity to give them guidance rather than just being directive. So thinking about times you have to really be directive versus times that you can just be guiding the person. Like, here we go, we're going to go this direction, right? So that's why you need to be giving continuous feedback. One-on-one meetings and team meetings, those are all need to be scheduled. And also in the moment when you're working with someone is a good time to give feedback. Continuous feedback also strengthens the culture, and it gives the opportunity for employees and managers to share kind of what they're thinking of. I always go to anybody that I'm working with if I have a problem and I, say, hey, this isn't really working, or this didn't get delivered on time. And then I ask them, how would you solve this if you were me, or how do you think we can solve this? Rather than correcting them, I ask them to come up with a solution. And invariably, that leads to a much better conversation. And it gives you the opportunity to understand why instead of making assumptions about why somebody's doing something. Okay, last slide. Okay, so here's your adaptable leader checklist. So what are you focusing on? Well, you're focusing on the fact that there's change, how you're going to build teams, how you're going to provide assessments, and how you're going to provide feedback. So, as we talked about, change is inevitable, it's necessary, and it's happening. So that person earlier who was talking about how they said we don't want any free thinkers here, well, eventually it's going to change whether they like it or not, because they're not going to have any choice in the marketplace. And so they're going to be really sad they don't have you as a free thinker if you leave. But you need to be ready to adjust to that change and adapt to it. You also need to think about, how do you create psychological safety with your team? Reference the Google list. It's really important. And psychological safety, again, number one reason that people are productive on teams. Continual assessment of team members in relation to their tasks, projects, and goals. So using Blanchards model, or that skill versus will model I talked about, really important. If you're going to give somebody a task, thinking about in your mind, how able and how willing is this person to do this task? And is it the right task for them? Maybe it should go to a different team member. And then feedback. Giving people feedback and giving them opportunities to win for themselves is really critical, and it needs to be immediate, and it has to be ongoing. So if you do all of that, what you're going to end up with is increased skill, increased motivation, a sense of psychological safety, the certainty of effective communication, and basically happy, motivated, productive teams. So that is my, you go back to the, I have an appendix in there. That's the entire presentation I'm doing today. So let's take some questions. What kind of questions do you have about this?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Clarion. First of all, that was a lot of awesome information, right, y'all?
Yeah.
If you have any questions that we didn't already cover, feel free to drop them in the chat right now. A couple of housekeeping notes. You can definitely find more on giving feedback in tomorrow's Bossed Up podcast. So if you haven't already, head to your Apple Podcast app in your phone, or if you're an Android user, try Google Play, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Subscribe to Bossed Up now so you'll never miss an episode. And we also just did an interview with Sheila Heen, who is the author of this book under my laptop right now. Thanks for the feedback.
That's a great one.
It's a great book, right?
That is a great book. Mm-hmm.
That one was called Finding the Feedback You Need. But this is really, really helpful. Nicola says, very valuable and relevant information. Thank you. So
thanks, Nicola.
Clarion, I think it's possible we answered a lot of questions along the way. So let's follow up with you.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So I'm sorry, this is all appendix stuff. So I didn't put any of my follow-up information, but I am on Instagram at Michelle, I'm going to put it in here, Clarion King. I am also on Facebook as Clarion King. And I have my own group at Coaching for Growth. Oops. And a lot of you, if you've been in the Bossed Up Courage community, you see me on there because I comment on a lot of things. So you know what, you are absolutely can ask questions for that. Also, if you want to email me directly, here is my email that you can send me a question and I'll be happy to answer it. And then basically if you have any questions or you have scenarios where you're kind of thinking, how do I actually do this? Be sure to use the Bossed Up Courage community. Not only do you get a lot of great feedback on there, but I see, I go in there every day and look for anything I can help somebody with in answering their questions. And I've talked to a lot of people individually on the community too. So if there's like a kind of a confidential thing, we can always PM or DM each other as well. And I'm happy to help. And then I will propose to Emily maybe doing another webinar on difficult communication or difficult conversations or uncomfortable conversations as well.
I love it.
So yeah, okay. Awesome. So thank you guys.
Thank you. And thanks so much to all of our amazing trainers like Clarion. As she mentioned, the Courage community is the place to be. If you're not already a part of it, I'm going to send you an invite when I send you this recording, or you can get one right away at bossedup.org and sign up on the front page, and you'll get invited to the Facebook group, which has been called the best place on Facebook.
No, seriously. I'm just going to give a shout out, besides the fact that I just think Emily is amazing. But the Bossed Up Courage community is so awesome because it's super positive. You only get support in that. It's the only place on Facebook where I really feel like you just always get support, and people are so willing to help and give you information. So I love it there.
And I love seeing women celebrate their wins there and get cheered on. It's such a great place to check in when you're struggling and when you're thriving. And for a boss squad to be behind you every step of the way. I already mentioned the podcast, but I do want to give a special offer to y'all for joining today. Bossed Up Bootcamp, which I mentioned at the very top, is the flagship program that started it all. It's the best thing I do. We feature a whole bunch of trained Bossed Up trainers like Clarion at Bootcamp. It's a 2-day workshop for women who are navigating career transition. It's intimate. It's not a huge conference. It's highly interactive, and you're going to leave with a clear roadmap for the steps you need to take and some refreshed skills that'll help you take them to make your dream career a reality. And we also bring in like a licensed therapist to talk about love and relationships, and we have a health and wellness component. So we cover all your bases in 2 days. It's a lot.
Plus, it's fun. It's so super fun. She's leaving that part out.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's true, because if I do this like so many weekends out of a year, it damn well better be fun. So.
Right. Well, and you guys, I have to tell you, I am a trainer, and I've attended, oh my gosh, thousands of trainings over the year. And in all honesty, I walked away from boot camp going, I got so much information that was useful, like immediately useful to me from that experience, that it is worth every penny and more. Plus, it is a really fun time. And it's all women, so that part's fun too.
And so much so that she sent her daughter to boot camp last
I
week.
did.
It's legit. Thank you for that, Clarion. We've got 2 more boot camps this year coming up in Washington, D.C. in September. Sign up for that now because we are filling up fast. And Los Angeles in November. I'll be announcing the 2019 dates next month if all goes according to plan. You can save 20% off with code FASHION. Sorry, that should be something like management, but I forgot to refresh the slide between last week's webinar and this week's webinar. So I'll make sure that the code FASHION will still get you 20% off if you register in the next 24 hours. So feel free to share that with folks who didn't make it today. If you missed any part of today's webinar, I'll be sending you an email with this recording in it and all this information as well. And I hope to see you at Bossed Up Bootcamp soon. It really is the best thing I do.
It is. It's awesome.
To Clarion for this fantastic training.
Thanks. It's so great to be here with all of you today.
Awesome. Thanks to each and every one of you for joining us. Have a great rest of your week and tune in for more Bossed Up Wednesday webinars coming to you in July. You'll see our July challenge calendar come out this weekend. At the start of the month, we'll email you with some more invitations. I love giving the opportunity for free conversation, for free information, because I really believe that our trainers are changing the world and that the more we can get this information out there, the better to help you lift as you climb. Yes, the coupon has expired because I forgot to renew it. So I'm going to fix that right now. But that was very speedy. I like that.
She was like, I'm on it.
I will fix that right now. Talk to y'all soon.
Okay, thanks everybody. Bye.
Thank you.